Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week, just another sampling of serial killers. As this is why you listen to the show, because you like stuff like this. So, 3 stories this week. Probably some. I don't know. I would not say that these are the most well-known serial killers, but probably like mid-tier. All right, not like super obscure, but like, you know, if you did some basic internet searches, you'd come across these names. But we're looking at the stories of Keith Hunter Jesperson, Tommy Lynn Sells, and our first story after I hit the fancy button is of Carl Panzram. Carl Panzram was one of 5 kids born to a Prussian immigrant family in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, in 1892. And pretty much like right out of the gate, like he was a terrible kid. Like he constantly lied. He stole pretty much anything he could get his hands on. At age 7, he was actually sent to a juvenile court on a drunk and disorderly charge. At age 7, drunk, a little drunk kid. That's insane to me. In 1903, his parents finally had enough of him and sent him to the Minnesota State Training School. And while he was there, as what tends to happen at these sorts of reform schools, Carl was continuously beaten and raped and tortured by the staff members at the school inside what was known as the painting house, which was this nickname for this disciplinary house where children would emerge, quote unquote, painted with bruises and covered in blood. So, I mean, like, that's pretty creative nickname for just a terrible place. Carl hated this school so much that he vowed to burn it down. And that's exactly what he did on July 7th, 1905. He, like, true to his word, even if it is a terrible word. After burning the school down, Carl then just returned home because, like, where else was he going to go? And went back to his life of theft and alcoholism. So at age 14, he then decided to run away from home, figuring life on the rails as a hobo would be better than, I don't know, being at home. At one point, however, he was gang raped by a group of hobos in a train car. So, like, this kid's life is, on one hand, insane. And on the other hand, it's awful. Because it's like, terrible kid, drunk 7-year-old preteen, for, you know, like a drunk first grader or a drunk second grader. Like, I can't even imagine. But then he goes to this reform school and he's beaten and raped. But then he's like, I'm going to burn this school down. And then he does it. A 13-year-old burning down an entire school. And then at 14, he's like, because his voice is cracking because of puberty, I'm going to go run away from home and be a hobo. And then he's just riding the rails across the Great Plains, and then a gang of hobos in a train car gang rapes him. It's insane. The following year, when he's age 15, he decided to join the army. I don't know how he managed that. But he was quickly convicted of larceny and sent to Fort Leavenworth for 2 years. And while he was in Leavenworth, according to Carl, anything that was good that was left in him was destroyed, which, I don't know, seems like a strange thing to say because it didn't seem like there was a lot of good in him to begin with. But after his release and discharge from the army, Carl went back to his life of crime, spent time in and out of various prisons all across the country, from California to Connecticut, just riding the rails, making a crime, and then getting caught for it and going to prison. After a 10-year crime spree that included things like theft and arson and assault, Carl started to get bored with that and decided to do something a little bit different. In August of 1920, Carl broke into the home of former President William Howard Taft and stole jewelry, bonds, and a handgun. And this wasn't like just some random thing, all right? Carl had actually blamed President Taft for his imprisonment at Leavenworth because like Taft had actually approved the sentence. And he decided that while he was in prison, he was going to get revenge in any way he could. And so he just figures out where the former president lived, which I guess this had to have been before like any kind of Secret Service, and then just like burglarizes the former president's home. After the burglary, Carl used the money that he stole from President Taft and bought a yacht, and then began luring sailors from New York City bars to kind of attend this fake party that he was having on his yacht, right? So you kind of see where this is going. When he got the sailors onto the yacht, he would get them even more drunk, and then he would rape them and then shoot them with President Taft's own gun that he stole. Like this is, gosh, man. Like imagine doing that now, right? Like some guy breaks into George W. Bush's home and then steals his gun and then starts murdering people with the president's gun. I don't know. Just, God, just the unique absurdity of this story just really, really soothes my soul. Right. Carl did this to 10 different sailors. And then after that, he ran the yacht aground near Atlantic City and then just decided to move on and do something else. In 1921, Carl then boarded a ship for Africa and sailed to Angola, where he then burned down an entire oil rig just because he could. And then he just raped and killed a 12-year-old boy in Africa. Like now he's international. Carl ended up writing about this experience, and he said, his brains were coming out of his ears when I left him. He will never be any deader. So like, I don't know, man. I know there's like a saying where, you screwed someone's brains out. Maybe this is where that originated, right? Because Carl literally raped this kid's brains out of his head. And sure, before he left Africa, Carl then hired a charter boat with 6 rowers. And while they were out on the river or wherever they were, Carl shot all of them and then fed them one by one to the crocodiles in the river. Like, this dude's insane. Over the next 6 years, Carl then assumed some various aliases, and he killed 4 more people and stole various pieces of property around New England. He served some time in prison, but he always found a way to escape every single time. On August 30th, 1928, Carl was arrested in Baltimore after stealing jewelry and a radio from a Washington, D.C. dentist. And this time, Carl admitted to killing 3 boys just in 1928 alone. He also confessed to planning a mass murder in which he was going to poison a city's water supply, or alternatively, if he couldn't do that, sink a British warship docked in New York Harbor in order to start a war between Britain and the United States. This dude wanted to be the most evil supervillain that ever lived. And he had some solid plans. I'll give him credit for that. With that confession, along with his previous criminal record, Carl was given 25 to life back at Leavenworth. Once he got there, he then told the warden that he was going to kill the first person who bothered him. And so with that you can't really say that in prison. So he was sent to solitary confinement, which I don't know, somehow didn't work, because on June 20th, 1929, he beat the laundry foreman to death with an iron bar. And at that point, Carl was sentenced to death for that murder. And here's what's crazy. Even in 1929, there were human rights activists that showed up at the prison and tried to appeal the conviction or tried to appeal the execution. And Carl wasn't having it. Carl actually did not want these people there. He ended up writing, the only thanks you and your kind will ever get from me for your efforts on my behalf is that I wish you all had one neck and that I had my hands on it. So he's basically I wish I could just choke all of you out right now and kill all of you. because you're stupid. And I get that. Like, I understand to a degree, like, if there's any kind of doubt on a murder conviction, on a death sentence conviction, sure, appeal it. All right. Maybe that. But when it's like super heinous stuff like this, unapologetic, multiple murders, multiple witnesses, there's no reason to appeal it. There's no, like, kill him immediately. All right. While on death row, Carl confessed to 21 murders, like thousands of other crimes, and over 1,000 rapes on men. He made it very clear how sorry he was not about any of this. Like, he was 100%, like, was just like, yeah, I did it. Feels great. Would do it again. On September 5th, 1930, Carl was walked to the gallows at Leavenworth, with his final words being, "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill a dozen men while you're screwing around." So, God, I mean, outside of just being an awful person like Carl Panzram, great story. Love it. Our next story here is of Tommy Lynn Sells, who was born on June 28th, 1964 in Oakland, California, with his twin sister, Tammy Jean, which is interesting because Tommy Lynn and Tammy Jean, that's Southern. That is some good, just deep South thing. But no, they were born in California, which is interesting. When they were 18 months old, both contracted meningitis. Tommy ended up surviving, but Tammy did not. And Tammy's death devastated Tommy's mother, who then sent him to live with his aunt in Missouri. Tommy eventually then returned back to California, and when he was there, his mother let him hang out with a man named Willis Clark, who happily and with his mother's permission started molesting him. Like, what's that conversation like, right? It's like, "Hey there, Mrs. Sells, you got a pretty little boy right there. Can I touch his wiener?" "Well, I guess that seems fine to me. I don't know. I mean, I can't touch his wiener, but you sure can. Seems like a fine thing to do." I don't know. This is a weird thing to do. By 1978, Tommy was homeless and hitchhiking across the country, which tends to happen when you're molested a lot as a kid, I think. He was working various jobs. He was drinking heavily. He was committing, petty crimes and just, kind of in and out of prison. This is as like by 14, right? So like he's on the Carl Panzram path of life. At age 15, he broke into a house and actually found an older gentleman in the process of, honking a child's bobo, if you will, which is insane. What are the odds, right? Tommy Lynn Sells grows up being molested, and then he runs away to live this life of crime. And then in the middle of committing a crime, he breaks into a house where this kid is actively being molested. And Tommy was just like, I'm gonna get justice here. I'm going to be a hero. And he just kills this guy who was molesting this kid. And then he moved on. Like, he was never really caught for that. In 1985, he had gotten a job as a carny in Missouri, which makes sense. Carney, serial killer, same thing. And Tommy met 28-year-old Ina Court and her 4-year-old son. Ina apparently just really turned on by carnies in Missouri, invited Tommy back to her house that night, where the two made sweet, passionate carny love. Just imagine the smell of just cigarettes and ball sweat just flapping in the trailer park breeze. Anyway, I'm in a mood today. Tommy, after they had done that, Tommy then awoke in the middle of the night to actually find Ina stealing things out of his backpack, which is, look, I'm not going to say that's mistake number one. Mistake number one was having sex with Tommy Lynn Sells as a carny. It's gross. Mistake number two was thinking that she was the actual criminal in this little relationship. And when Tommy saw her trying to steal things from them, he then beat her to death with her son's baseball bat And then because you can't murder someone quietly with a baseball bat, all of the ruckus had woken up Ina's 4-year-old son, and he watched the whole thing happen. And so when Tommy got done, he then beat the son to death with the baseball bat, just because you didn't need eyewitnesses for that sort of thing. During a 16-month prison sentence for stealing a truck in Wyoming in 1990, Tommy was actually diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, substance abuse disorder, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, I'm not done, psychosis, and schizophrenia, which, yeah, makes a lot of sense. But here's the thing. Even with that CVS receipt of illnesses that clearly require a significant amount of therapy and observation and medication, authorities just let him go. They let him back out into the wild. And so over the next decade, Tommy went from town to town across the United States, killing people. On December 31st, 1999, Tommy was in Del Rio, Texas, where he slit the throats of 13-year-old Katie Harris and 10-year-old Crystal Searles. Although Harris was killed, Searles was able to survive and provide a description to police. He was arrested a few days later and claimed to have killed over 70 people, although forensic scientists don't really believe that. They think he was kind of trying to trick authorities by confessing to things that he hadn't actually done. Prosecutors in Illinois wanted to extradite Tommy there for the murder of an entire family in 1987, but Texas, they had caught him, and they weren't about to let some other state give a criminal that they caught the death penalty. Like, Texas wanted to kill these people. And so on April 3rd, 2014, Tommy was given the lethal injection at the Texas State Penitentiary. Authorities ended up confirming as many as 22 murders, but believe that he could have done way more than that. Unfortunately, because Tommy changed his story on several occasions, they were never able to definitively connect him to many more murders other than the 22 that they had already gotten. Our last story here is of Keith Hunter Jesperson, who was born in Canada to an unstereotypically violent family. Like, we all thought that Canadians were all nice. He's like, hey, welcome to Canada. You know, we're just all nice. But the Jespersons were like, hey, why don't you leave Canada? I'm gonna beat you with a moose head or something. I don't know. I don't know what that is. Keith, he eventually grew to be a pretty rotund little fella. Which, look, you can't be a fat kid because you get made fun of by all the other kids. Which still doesn't sound like something Canadians would do. You know, it's just like, we would think it's more something like, hey, there, got a couple extra layers of fat there. Bet you stay pretty warm in the summer. I'm a little jealous myself, eh? You're thinking two, 3 steps ahead of us there. Keith, I just, man, I wish I had your ingenuity. I'm over here shivering my timbers off here. But no, the Canadians were just like, hey, you're fat, you little fatty. I don't even know. I don't know what Canadian voice that is, but I like it. It's fun. So anyway, he didn't have any friends because everyone makes fun of him for being fat. And so to combat his loneliness, and also to avoid his father's violent beatings, which happened often, and to find some sense of control, Keith started torturing and killing animals by strangling them to death. Just really turning into Lenny from Of Mice and Men. Just, eat here, want to be my friend? Whatever. The voice is becoming less and less Canadian as I go along. But those actions, killing animals, eventually turned into fantasies of strangling actual people. So when he was in middle school, I think the Jespersons ended up immigrating to Washington State, where Keith graduated high school and then took a job as a truck driver. He even got married, had 3 kids. Life is going really well for him. However, his ultimate goal was to become a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. But by 1990, things were not going in that direction. He had been divorced. He had actually suffered an injury while he was training to become a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And all of that just destroyed his dream. And so with nothing really left to live for, Keith continued working as a truck driver. And he was just kind of content with that. But then he realized that he could pursue his other dream, which was just murdering people. Because, you know, I don't know, maybe in his head, he thought if he could become a police officer, he could like legally kill people. And that could like scratch that little itch that he had developed when he was like strangling squirrels or whatever lives in Canada, right? Because here's the thing, like as a truck driver, his travels allowed him to kill anyone he wanted without being a suspect, because he could just show up in a town, kill somebody, and then the next day he's in another state, right? Like he has no ties to the area. And so, and look, at 6'7" and 240 pounds, like few people were going to stop this guy. Like he was a big dude. And so on January 23rd, Keith met Tanja Bennett at a bar in Portland, Oregon. I don't know what year this was. 1990, I think. On January 23rd, he met Tanja Bennett in a bar in Portland, Oregon, and invited her back to a home that he was renting in the city. When he tried to have sex with her, she refused. And so, you know, rather than being like, oh, man, I'm sorry there, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. You know, he had a nice little body there. Thought I was going to maybe stick my wiener in you, but you refused. That's on me. That's my fault there. Why don't you just head on out your way? We'll go our separate ways and just kind of forget this embarrassing episode ever happened there. But no, what he does is he starts beating her. And then he, like, what's weird is just like he beats her up. But then he gets concerned that she's going to call the police, which, duh, obviously. So then he just strangles her to death. And in order to now have an alibi, because all of these people at the bar saw her leave with him, and they're going to suspect him of when they eventually find her body. So Keith goes back to the bar and just starts talking with several people. And it's just like, yeah, man, went right home. We had a fun time there. She got a great body, got the booty out of this world there, you know. And you know, I think you know, I don't know. I hope I see her again. Hope this turns into something, because man, she's a little firecracker there, ain't you know? And yeah, I just you know, trying to start a family again. You know, first wife left me, and, you know, just took the kids with her, and then just really tore me down. But this girl, you know, got that spark there. And then, you know, I don't know, like all these people at the bar just like, yeah, it's cool, dude. I don't care. But so now he's got an alibi, so that when people talk to him, he's like, no, yeah, he came back, told us this thing, or whatever. So he then went back home, disposed of the body. And then because he was a truck driver, he was on the road the next day. And by the time police found the body, they had no leads to work with, because, you know, Jesperson wasn't around, and anyone they interviewed, you know, he kind of checked out, right? When news of Bennett's death actually made the news, this is also what's crazy. A woman named Laverne Pavlinak saw it as an opportunity to break up with her abusive boyfriend, John Sosnovsky. So that is a name. And so using details that was provided by the news, Laverne told investigators that John had forced her to help him rape and murder Tanja Bennett. The couple was actually arrested for this murder on March 5th and was actually convicted a year later. A jury found Laverne and John guilty of murdering Tanja Bennett, even though they had absolutely nothing to do with it. John was sentenced to life in prison for murdering someone, and Laverne was actually given 10 years as an accessory, which that's... what kind of realization are you having where your plan has totally backfired? You're just trying to get out of an abusive relationship, and now you're in prison for 10 years. And so when she realized that all of this had not gone the way that she thought she would, she confessed that all of it was made up and told her. But police didn't believe her. Like, they just thought she was trying to get out of prison. So they ignored her. And so they're just in prison now for a murder that they did not commit. Meanwhile, Keith, he spends the next 4 years meeting several women, most of them sex workers in California, Oregon, and Florida. He strangles each one following some sort of dispute, probably around their lack of desire to have sex with him. And then he would just dispose of the bodies along the way. On multiple occasions, he didn't even know the names of the people that he killed, which made it even more difficult for police to connect him to the murders later on, after he was caught. Spoiler alert, he gets caught. In January 1995, Keith agreed to give Angela Cerbrisi a ride from Spokane, Washington to Indiana to see her boyfriend. A week into the trip, because it really should not take a week to get from Washington to Indiana. You can probably do it in like 2 or 3 days. Angela started to get impatient and began nagging Keith to go faster. In response, this is what's insane. This is one of the most insane details of a serial killer story I've ever come across. Keith got so annoyed that he raped and strangled this woman to death before strapping her to the undercarriage of his truck and then grinding her face off with the pavement. Like he just, and like, who doesn't see this? How do you not, maybe he did it in the middle of the night. I don't know. How do you not see, like, first just a trail of blood, right? And maybe, I don't know, maybe it looks like just an oil splatter because you kind of see that on the road sometimes. But like, how do you just not see like the body of a woman just face down, just getting sandpapered off with the highway on the interstate? Because he's probably going pretty fast, right? I don't know. That's crazy. In 1995, by March of 1995, Keith had actually had an actual girlfriend, but he decided to murder her because he had come to believe that she was only with him for that fat, hefty truck driver salary that truck drivers are making. And look, truck drivers make pretty decent money, but it's not like life-changing money. So her body was eventually found. Everyone knew that her boyfriend was Keith Jesperson, so police finally had a reason to talk to him. However, Keith refused to cooperate and instead tried on 2 different occasions to kill himself. But when that didn't work, he decided that he would then turn himself in, hoping that he would maybe get a lighter sentence. And so while he is in custody for his girlfriend's murder, he began openly telling officers about the other murders that he had committed. He claimed 185, but police only linked him to 8 murders in 6 different states. And then he was eventually convicted of 4 of them and given 4 life sentences. One of those murders that he was convicted of was the murder of Tanja Bennett. And once that became official, John and Laverne were released from prison. And you got to imagine Laverne probably pretty scared for her life at the point. Like maybe, I don't know if she got into witness protection or not, but you're already trying to get an abusive guy out of your life, and then you have him convicted for a murder that he didn't commit. So when he gets out, he's probably going to be pretty salty, but I don't know how that part of the story ended. All right, so episode 150, just some fun stories. I think, look, it's not like an official milestone or anything, but, kind of like halfway point between two milestones. And so, just some fun, those are some fun stories, right? Just like crazy details, got good amount of police incompetence, which always makes for interesting serial killer stories. But let's recap and see what we learned today. What did we learn? Number 1, Carl Panzram stole President William Taft's gun and murdered a bunch of people with it and did not feel sorry for it at all, right? Lynn Sells grew up molested and then got into murder by just randomly walking in on another kid getting molested, which admirable, but then, I don't know, do something better with your life other than just continuously kill people. I don't know. And then number 3, Keith Hunter Jesperson killed one of his victims by just grinding her face off the pavement by strapping her to the undercarriage of his truck. Next week on Our Weird World, it's the start of a new month, which means it's another weird fun bag episode, episode number 3, and it's 3 more stories. We're looking at the stories of Lobster Boy, the Rainbow Man, and the indestructible man, Michael Malloy. These are all just, like, you thought today's stories were crazy. Next week's stories are also equally just weird. They're just weird. And can't wait to share those with you. So looking forward to that next week. And that's going to do it. Thank you so much for listening. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird. One. Here comes the 2 to the 3 to the 4. Everybody drunk out on the dance floor. Baby girl jiggle like she want more. Like she a groupie and I ain't even on tour. Maybe 'cause she heard that I rhyme hardcore. Or maybe 'cause she heard that I buy out the stores. Bottom of the 9th and gotta score. If not, I gotta move on to the next whore. Here comes the 3 to the 2 to the 1. Homeboy trippin', he don't know I got a gun. When it come to pop, man, we do it for fun. You ain't got one, you better run. Now I'm in the back getting head from my huns. While she going down, I'm breaking down what I'm done. And she smoking my blunt, saying she ain't having fun. Give it back, now you don't get none. 2. Here comes the 3 to the 4 to the 5. Now I'm looking at Shorty right in the eyes. Couple seconds passed, now I'm looking at her thighs. While she telling me how much she hate her guy. Said she got a kid, but she got her tubes tied. If you 21, girl, that's all right. I wonder if a shake coming with them fries. If so, baby, can I get 'em supersized? Here comes the 4 to the 3 to the 2. She started feeling on my Johnson right out of the blue. Girl, you super thick, so I'm thinking that's cool. I gotta finish. But instead of one lifestyle, I need 2. Her eyes got big when she glanced at my jewels. Expression on her face like she ain't got a clue. And she told me she don't run with a crew. You know how I do, but I guess one gotta do. A body in the club getting tipsy. Body in the club getting tipsy. Body in the club getting tipsy. Body in the club getting tipsy.